Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled HOA trespassed and broke into my home with bolt cutters and destroyed my tree. I sued them for $285,000. HOAs are hell. If you have never had the pleasure of living in an HOA neighborhood, consider yourself lucky. Hell, even if you have not lived in an HOA neighborhood, you have heard horror stories about HOAs, their ridiculous fines, and how they ruin neighborhoods. My story starts about 4 years ago. I knew what an HOA was, but I had never lived in an HOA neighborhood before. However, my grandparents did. And 4 years ago, my grandmother died just a couple of years after my grandpa. I ended up inheriting their house and moved in right away until I decided what I wanted to do with it. It was a really beautiful house, and because my grandparents practically raised me in it, I did not want to sell it. The thought of it going to some stranger or someone buying it and not taking care of it made me sad, so I figured I would live in it until I could rent it out to another family member. This was hard as I was an only child or someone who was close to me. Just 3 days after moving in, some board members came knocking on my door. There was 3 of them, and right off the bat, they were very rude and nosy. Since I inherited the house and was a new tenant, I had to resign the HOA papers in order to be considered a member, as my grandma was. While one of them was explaining this to me, another board member was trying to peek around in my garage. Keep in mind, the garage door was open, but because I was still moving stuff around and in my new house. So I politely asked what he was doing, and he responded with, "I need to check your garage. If everything there is in order, I have a right to do this bi-weekly, and denying me access is an offense that will cost a fine." What the F? How would it cost me a fine if I technically was not even a member yet? I had not signed any papers, instead I had taken the papers from them and asked them to leave my property. After they left, I had decided to look through the papers. Their attitudes were absolutely ridiculous, so I assumed that their rules were even more ridiculous. And boy, was I right. On the list of rules were things such as only 1 car being parked in the driveway, even if it was a 2-car driveway. Another rule said that during the winter we were not allowed to let snow pile up and had to shovel it every 2 hours starting at 5 AM. It was just a lot of BS stuff. It was like they were trying to find stupid things to fine people over so they could make more money, and a little foreshadowing, I was right about that. Anyways, about a week later, they came to my door once again, pressuring me to sign their contracts. I said absolutely no way because I actually read the rules and they were ridiculous. There was no way that I was going to agree to all that and the stupid fines. Within 5 days of them coming back a second time, I had received over $1,000 in fines from them via mail. How can they even send me fines if I did not sign the papers? Not only that, but were they really that ballsy? Did they think I would actually pay them? Anyways, I obviously refused to pay them, and they must have not taken well to this. Because 1 week later I had come home one afternoon and there were HOA board members in my yard. This is especially strange because my property is secured with a gate that I usually lock, as well as having a fence. Well, guess what? The HOA crazies did not care too much about the lock on my gate, as they just brought some good old bolt cutters to get rid of the lock. The first time I saw this, I honestly could not believe my eyes. Not only were they in my yard, but so were some professional landscapers. And they were in the process of taking down a huge oak tree that my grandma had planted with my grandpa when they bought the house. I was really pissed. They were trespassing on my property like criminals and making alterations that I did not approve whatsoever. So honestly, I flipped the F out. I immediately yelled at the crew to stop and that what they were doing was illegal. They were very confused, and upon a further discussion I found out that they were told that I was an HOA member and that these trees were overgrown and in violation of one of the HOA standards. I would like to mention that by this point the HOA board members had gotten in the car and driven off. However, that did not stop me from calling the police. I told the landscapers that I would not charge them for trespassing if they volunteered themselves as witnesses, and also told the police officers what had happened from their point of view. And after giving a detailed police report, I immediately contacted a lawyer. And these HOA morons actually had the balls to try and fight the charges against them. It was clear as day that they had broken the law. I never signed a paper saying I was in the HOA, and I never consented to taking down the tree, and I sure as hell did not consent to people breaking into my property with bolt cutters. Well, anyway, I decided that after that BS I was going to file another case stating emotional distress because this tree was planted by my grandma and grandpa over 50 years ago, and now it had been destroyed. In the end, they ended up having to pay me back $285,000. But that is not actually the end. These specific board members had been committing fraud during their time so that they could generate more income for themselves. Because of this, they were now faced with even more fines to others and had to sell their houses in order to pay for everything. Moral of the story: the HOA can screw you over even if you are not a member. Beware. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you still enjoy the stories about crazy HOAs, then I would really appreciate it if you could also like the video, because that would help my channel tremendously. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled, Neighbors' teenager sons fired shotguns on their front yard while being drunk and high on drugs. One thing about living in the South is that there are a lot of guns. Everywhere. I'm serious, if you live in the South, the little grandma next door to you has a gun. Now, this is not to make the South sound like a scary place. Most of the time we are using guns for hunting purposes. Self-defense every now and then. I would say that most people I know who own guns have them locked up safely in their house. Except, of course, it was my luck that I lived next to the one family in town that did not practice gun safety. And of course, the mother next door was a school teacher. With all due respect, what is it with parents in some sort of authority having misbehaved kids? Before we get to the part where my next door neighbor's teenage sons dangerously handled some guns, we have a few small backstories. They have always been mischievous kids running around the neighborhood, terrorizing passerbys, being obnoxiously loud until the wee hours of the morning while everyone was asleep. And I cannot blame them. Teenagers are mischievous naturally, and even I myself made some questionable decisions. However, I sure as hell never started a small fire in my backyard at 1 in the morning or ran out of the neighborhood targeting my siblings with my BB gun. But to each their own, I guess. The first time I figured out these kids were troublemakers was when they were playing video games at 1 in the morning, and they were so loud that even the neighbors across the street from them came out to see what was going on. They were so rowdy, my neighbors thought there was some sort of fight going on. Another instance of when these two brothers were acting a fool was when it was the middle of the night. As they got older and grew into their teenage years, these boys got more and more rowdy with more serious offenses. When they were just 14 and 16, the police officers were called on them for having a house party while their parents were away, and the police officers had found out that they were underage drinking. Now, I'm not really sure what punishment they received for this, if they received any, but it did not seem to do them any good. And this is where we get to the shooting guns in the neighborhood part. See, it was beginning to get to a point where no one in the neighborhood liked this family. Luckily for me, I just ignored them and did not acknowledge them, and this was fine with them. However, the neighbors on the other side of their house had told me she was considering filing a complaint or police report because there were people coming in and out of that house all hours of the night when the mom was away. Even when the mom was there, the brothers would have some shady looking people over and they would spend time together on that side of the house between their house and her house. Well, on one summer evening, I was relaxing inside the house with my wife and dog. We were deeply focused on our movie when all of a sudden we heard several gunshots that sounded extremely close to our house. If we didn't know any better, they could have been coming from our backyard. That is how close they sounded. I immediately thought about my wife and dog, and obviously I had no idea what was going on. So I picked both of them up and ran to lock them in the room to call 911. Well, guess what? It was the kids from next door. After the police had come and let us know it was safe to come out, we heard that it was the kids next door. And my god, stepping out into our front lawn, not only was it a great feeling to see the kids in handcuffs, but it was a great feeling seeing the mom in handcuffs as well. Apparently, not only did police officers find several more firearms in the house, but they also found narcotics. It was not clear yet if the narcotics were the kids or the moms, or that they were in on it together. Either way, all three of them were arrested and are awaiting trial. The last I heard, the mom was let go of her teaching duties as well. And yeah, ripe stars, that teacher is definitely not a good parent. And by the way guys, I'm curious, have you also made the experience that people in high positions, or basically people that have a lot of authority, tend to have misbehaving kids? Let us know in the comments if that is true in your experience as well. For me personally, I cannot really confirm that from my personal experience, but I would say I also don't know that many people that are in like super high important positions. And the last one is a story from r/ahole tax, and it is titled Customer A-hole tax. So, I work in a fishing store and in walks one of my usual customers and a new guy, an older guy in his 60s. As is customary here in Poland, I greet them with a good morning. It is rude not to reply or acknowledge a greeting, but whatever. The old dude, however, did not, but I gave it no mind. So my usual gets some gear, around $140 worth, and gets to paying. The old dude lines up behind him and waits. Usual customer tells me, "Damn, I'm supposed to go shopping for groceries and I only have 160 on me." He starts to put back some items, so I stop him and say, "It's fine, I'll give you 20 bucks off since you buy here weekly." So he leaves happy with enough cash left for groceries. And by the way guys, that seems like a pretty huge discount. Anyway, seeing that the old dude grabs some more stuff and comes back to get checked out and says, "Alright, that's all. I grabbed some more stuff because I saw you were selling at a discounted price. So what is my discount gonna be?" I look at his total and it came out to about $80. So I tell him, "Sir, I cannot really give you a discount since we usually give discounts with purchases equal to or above $100. But I'll tell you what, I'll give you 50% off your most expensive item in your bag," which was a 2-kilogram bag or carb pellets for $50. "But if you promise to come back soon," I said jokingly with a big smile that quickly faded. "Old dude, who the F do you think you are? What kind of business do you think you're running? You think you can just pick and choose a discount to give people? If you're giving me a discount, it should be all the items I have. Give me a better deal or I'm never coming back." I am so in shock that I had to take a few seconds to process what just happened. He did not give me the chance to reply before he took his arm and swiped everything to the ground, saying, "F this crap, I ain't buying it anymore." That caused the 2-kilogram bag of 2mm carb bait pellets to burst and spill little pellets all over the store's floor, and a bottle of bait booster, liquid attractant, to spill on the floor and made the whole shop smell like bloodworms, which is very stinky. I tell him, "Sir, you have to buy that." He gives me a stern "F no" and slaps the counter for some reason. I then tell him that I have cameras and if he won't pay, I will be forced to call the police. I also added that we have cameras in the parking lot, so I will know his plate numbers. Suddenly, a magical change of heart. "Old dude, alright fine, I'll pay, so that's 50 off, making the pellets $25 and the booster $5. I cut him off. "No, that is $50 for the pellets and $10 for the booster." "Old dude, wait what? Where's my 50% off? Don't be a brat about it." Me, "That's 50% was only for the pellets and your discount left as soon as your manners did. That will be $60 total." Old dude, "Damn, come on kid, don't be a dick. I'm sorry. Please give me a better price and don't be a witch about it. Please man, do me a favor." Me, after hearing that sorry excuse of an apology, Nah, $60 or it's the cops. The dude ended up paying after 10 more minutes of pleading and calling me a dick and then left. The best part is that he still comes back in shame because we have the best prices in town. I make it a point to give people ahead of him discounts loud and clear just to sprinkle some salt in his wound. Moral of the story, take the damn discount and leave. And yeah, ripe stars, that once again reinforces one of my life's mottos, which is don't be too greedy. Really, at least in my personal experience, in almost any situation, you can simply tell yourself, don't be too greedy. It simply always reigns true, and if you get too greedy, very rarely something good comes out of it. And the next one is titled, Pennsylvania, parents bought a house 6 years ago. 2 separate groups of people have come around claiming to be previous owners who left something there and would like to look around to find it. Actual previous owners died at the end of February. Writing on behalf of my parents, my father had the pleasure of meeting the first 3 people to visit 2 weeks ago, claiming they used to live there in the 2000s and left some items they needed back. My dad told them to go away and it is his house now, the right response I think. The actual previous owner owned the house since the late 1970s until mid-2014 when my parents bought it. Just last weekend another couple came around making a similar claim, but they were very pushy, threatened to do my father for theft, threatened to bring the police around and told my dad he probably knew exactly why they were there. My dad pushed back and demanded they tell him precisely what they thought they wanted from inside the house, but they wouldn't tell him anything specific. One of them let slip something like they would know when they found it. They didn't get anywhere or do anything like phone police and left. I am running scenarios around in my head that when the previous owner died, he had a will that left people something really valuable that was hidden in my parents' house. What would their responsibility be if there was something hidden in the house and left in a will? Do my mother and father own it? Would that depend on the value? If it was unknown at the time of purchase, does its ownership stay with the previous owner? Is there a blanket way to stop people coming to the door and being pushy like the last couple? I guess that's not possible without armed guards, but maybe if we had a copy of the will, it could be resolved or worked around. Are wills public? My father's plans to tell the next people to visit that he knows what they are looking for and it's been sold, but I don't think that is a good course of action. I don't know if the item even exists or if it is something like great-grandpa's forgotten childhood sled or a bank robbery from 50 years ago with proceeds packed in the walls. Imagination goes wild, but there's something that some multiple someones think is there. I'm especially worried about how pushy they might get if they get my mother alone, as she's not as forceful as my father. And someone in the comments said, this sounds like a scam that 1 will allow a stranger inside your home to burglarize it right in front of you, and or number 2, allow someone to scout your home and make notes of valuables for their pals to burglarize later. Don't let them in, call the police if they show up again. And the next one said, the Occam's razor is that these people are burglars. Once they gain access to the house, they could pull a weapon and demand money, ATM cards, etc. Or one distracts your dad while the other steals valuables. Tell your dad to tell them no, tell them to leave and report trespassers to the police. It is a bad idea to make up a story like he is thinking, just trespass them. He should not engage with them more than necessary and shouldn't play along with their scam. And another user said, former police officer here, not a lawyer. None of these people, even if anything they said was true, has any right to access their house. The only way they should be even considered is if there is a court order and a real police officer there with them. However, when your parents bought the house, they assumed ownership of everything on and in the property that was not specifically excluded on the purchase contract. Update to the PA story. After my first post, my parents had another person visit who was also much like the previous ones, aggressive and wouldn't take no for an answer. They were also contacted that same day by someone claiming to be an executor for a will, and that person was much more sensible, but Dad still told them he wouldn't hand over anything but to contact his lawyer, which they understood and did so. We found out via the executor and Dad's lawyer that there was a will where the previous owner indicated some belongings accessible with a set of keys in a distinctive described key pouch. Not long after Dad moved in, he had found that exact set of keys while while renovating the bathroom and almost threw them out as they didn't match any locks in the house. They had been tossed in a kitchen drawer for years. Dad's lawyer said there was no reason not to hand the keys over, but no reason to do so either, and it was up to him. He handed the keys over to the executor through his lawyer. I would have expected if anything was left to someone in a will, the executor would have the power to drill any locks needed, but we guess it just makes their life easier. There were about 30 keys. It is not the proceeds of a 50-year-old bank heist hidden in the walls, but a little bit interesting. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.